James Comey. This is not the same Comey we've seen with a job. This is a defiant Comey. And we're going to see how defiant he can be. So let's get started. Now, from his vantage point, he has got nothing but reporters in his face, clicking photographs, and he's posing for the camera. And that's how we know he paused for the camera, because you saw him down at the bottom. They all started turning around, getting away from him, and he relaxed and he went into Comey mindset.
The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence exists to certify for the other 85 members of the United States Senate and the American people.
You see how heavy he is breathing here. He is truly trying, he's trying to be under control. Let's go back.
Exists to certify for the other 85 members of the United States Senate and the
See that breathing? This is not relaxed. This is stress. A lot of stuff. This is not the Comey that we know, that comes into a hearing and just speaks. And the other thing he's doing, he's holding this blank stare.
Is to investigate Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. elections. The committee's work continues. This hearing represents part of that effort. Jim, allegations have been swirling in the press for the last several weeks, and today's your opportunity to set the record straight. Yesterday, I read with interest.
Jim, allegations have been swirling around in the press. What does good old Jim do? Looks down in his lap. Now, you've got a deep state operative who knows where all the dirty laundry is, knows the law, knows who the players are. And as we found out, as the little reports have come out on this, that he admitted to leaking information to the press. I don't think that's all that was leaked. And I'm sure he knows who the other leakers are.
Only then will we, as a nation, be able to move forward and to put this episode to rest. There are several outstanding issues not addressed in your...
He is breathing so hard that he's literally moving his entire body, head and all.
Your statement that I hope you'll clear up for the American people today.
But the only time he moved his head that was not caused by breathing was there.
That is a statement that Director Comey interpreted as a request that he drop the investigation connected to General Flynn's false statements.
We're going back. I want you to watch his eyes as this is being read.
That is a statement that Director Comey interpreted as a request that he drop the investigation connected to General Flynn's false statements.
That's a lot of searching. One area of memory. It's like he's putting it together in his mind, how it logically should go based off of memory. He's preparing his RAM. That's what he's doing.
And had learned that I was doing a great job and that I was extremely well liked by the FBI workforce. So it confused me when I saw on television the president saying that he actually fired me because of the Russia investigation, and learned again from the media that he was telling privately other parties that my firing had relieved great pressure on the Russia investigation. I was also confused by the initial explanation that was offered publicly, that I was fired because of the decisions I had made during the election year. That didn't make sense to me for a whole bunch of reasons, including the time and all the water that had gone under the bridge since those hard decisions had to be made. That didn't make any sense to me. And although the law required no reason at all to fire an FBI director, the administration then chose to defame me, and more importantly, the FBI, by saying that the organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies, plain and simple. And I am so sorry that the FBI workforce had to hear them, and I'm so sorry that the American people were told them.
All right. I didn't let you watch the whole thing. I'm cutting it up because this will be forever long. But he's in portrayal. His body is singing with him. So regardless if it's truth or not, he believes what he's saying. But what he just said really caught my attention.
My workforce had to hear them, and I'm so sorry it lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies.
Okay, we're going to go back again because we didn't go back far enough.
The organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader.
All right, swallow and then listen.
Those were lies.
Those were lies. The voice is now telling on him. And he's in portrayal and stillness. His body is not singing with him when he says that.
Plain and simple.
And we see a head shake and no body movement.
And I am so sorry that the FBI workforce had to hear them.
But now his body starts to move with his head. But he's in portrayal.
And I'm so sorry that the American people were told them. I worked every day at the FBI to help make that great organization better. And I say help because I did nothing alone at the FBI.
Now his body's singing with he's in portrayal. Just a little FYI, after the Hillary Clinton debacle, when he stood up and said that, shouldn't be any charges, blah, 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 he was getting resignation letters daily from agents in the FBI.
I have a message before I close for my former colleagues of the FBI. But first, I want the American people to know this truth. The FBI is honest. The FBI is strong. And the FBI is and always will be independent. And now to my former colleagues, if I may.
He jumped on that. FBI will always be independent. Now, he believes that. He's always believed in the FBI. Through all his testimonies, he has had great things to say about the FBI, loves their integrity, and will fall on his sword for the FBI. That has not changed. Now, he said all that, and he takes a drink, which is pretty much putting the period on what he said and getting him to relax. So he's relaxing himself. He's ready to get started. That blank stare where he was at the beginning, just sitting there staring out, defiance, is melting away. Let's get into the meat.
Quote-unquote patronage relationship. The president seems, from my reading of your memo, to be holding your job or your possibility of continuing in your job over your head in a fairly direct way. What was your impression, and what did you mean by this notion of a patronage relationship?
Well, my impression, and again, it's my impression, I could always be wrong, but my common sense told me that what was going on is either he had concluded or someone had told him that you've already asked Comey to stay, and you didn't get anything for it, and that the dinner was an effort to build a relationship. In fact, he asked specifically of loyalty in the context of asking me to stay. And as I said...
Now he believes this. This is all coming as truth. His body sings, dances with him. Comey has a belief system. His belief system is government. As Trump has a belief system, his belief system is capitalism and the people. Now, when you have someone like Comey who is protecting government and government interest, which is what the Gang of Eight FBI does, and they meet someone like Trump who is not a puppet. Bush was a puppet to Cheney, Obama a puppet to Valerie Jarrett, Trump not a puppet to the state or anyone trying to push that agenda forward. And when you hear Comey speak, what you're hearing is his belief system on how to deal with someone of a warring faction. He sees Trump and the administration through that lens of an enemy mindset. So everything Trump does will be interpreted in that sense. Just like someone you're mad at, mom, spouse, kids, whoever, they tell you to get in the car. Your interpretation, because you're irritated with them or they're your enemy at that moment, get in the car. When you're not mad at them, it sounds like, get in the car, let's go. The lens you look through will color your mindset. And that's what we're seeing with Comey. And so when Trump sits there and keeps bringing him back to the White House, which you will hear, and constantly talking about his job, what Trump is doing in his mindset, because I've watched him enough to know, that he is trying to break Comey in a sense of, are you going to come and join the team and fight the fight we're fighting, capitalism, we the people, or are you going to stay on that fence and fight the fight they're fighting, government, big government? And what you found as we've been watching Comey, and anyone who actually sat and watched the entire 2 hours and 40 minutes, is that Comey was always fighting for government and preparing for government in that sense, with the memo writing that he didn't do for anyone else, because they weren't his warring factions. Those were the people on the side of government.
Words matter. You wrote down the words, so we can all have the words in front of us now. There's 28 words there that are in quotes, and it says, quote, I hope, this is the president speaking, I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go. Now, those are his exact words. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you wrote them here and you put them in quotes?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. He did not direct you to let it go.
Not in his words, no.
Now you see where we just went over the lenses we look through. He's been called out on what he wrote down in his memo. I hope. He did not direct you. Not in his words. The lens we look through. Because other parts of that in the testimony that comes out is Comey says something to the fact of, well, if we do the investigation and it'll clear or we'll find, who was collaborating, and that would be good. And Trump said, yeah, that'll be better. The lens we look through, people, the lens we look through.
He did not order you to let it go.
Again, those words are not in order.
No. He said, I hope. Now, like me, you probably did hundreds of cases, maybe thousands of cases, charging people with criminal offenses. And of course, you have knowledge of the thousands of cases out there that where people have been charged. Do you know of any case where a person has been charged for obstruction of justice, or for that matter, any other criminal offense, where they said or thought they hoped for an outcome?
I don't know well enough to answer. And the reason I keep saying his words is I took it as a direction.
Right.
I mean, this is the President of the United States with me alone saying, I hope this. I took it as this is what he wants me to do. Now, I didn't obey that, but that's the way I took it.
You may have taken it as a direction, but that's not what he said.
Correct.
He said, I hope.
Those are exact words,
Okay.
Correct.
You don't know of anyone that's ever been charged for hoping something. Is that a fair statement?
I don't as I sit here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Feinstein.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Comey, I just want you to know that I have great respect for you. Senator Cornyn and I sit on the Judiciary Committee, so we have occasion to have you before us. And I know that you're a man of strength and integrity, and I really regret the situation that we all find ourselves in. I just want to say that. Let me begin with one overarching question. Why do you believe you were fired?
I guess I don't know for sure. I believe I take the President at his word that I was fired because of the Russia investigation. Something about the way I was conducting it, the President felt created pressure on him that he wanted to relieve. Again, I didn't know that at the time, but I've watched his interview. I've read the press accounts of his conversations, so I take him at his word there. Now, look, I could be wrong. Maybe he's saying something that's not true, but I take him at his word, at least based on what I know now.
Talk for a moment about
And he believes that. His body says, yes, that's true.
his request that you pledge loyalty and your response to that and what impact you believe that had.
I don't know for sure, because I don't know the President well enough to read him well. I think it was, first of all, our relationship didn't get off to a great start, given the conversation I had to have on January 6th. This was not, this didn't improve the relationship because it was very, very awkward. He was asking for something and I was refusing to give it. But again, I don't know him well enough to know how he reacted to that exactly.
Do you
We had that downward look.
But again, I don't know him well enough to know how he reacted to that exactly.
Right there. That tells me, because Comey rarely does this, unless he's being deceptive. And he does know him well enough to know, or he at least knows, period.
Do you believe the Russia investigation played a role?
And why I was fired?
Yes.
Yes, because I've seen the President say so.
Let's go to the Flynn issue. Senator Reich outlined, I hope you could see your way to letting Flynn go. He's a good guy. I hope you can let this go. But you also said in your written remarks, and I quote, that you had understood the President to be requesting that we drop any investigation of Flynn in connection with false statements about his conversations with the Russian ambassador in December, end quote. Please go into that with more detail.
Well, the context and the President's words are what led me to that conclusion. As I said in my statement, I could be wrong, but Flynn had been forced to resign the day before. And the controversy around General Flynn at that point in time was centered on whether he had lied to the Vice President about the nature of his conversations with the Russians, whether he had been candid with others in the course of that. And so that happens on the day before. On the 14th, the President makes specific reference to that. And so that's why I understood him to be saying that what he wanted me to do was drop any investigation connected to Flynn's account of his conversations with the Russians.
Now, here's the question. You're big, you're strong. I know the Oval Office, and I know what happens to people when they walk in. There is a certain amount of intimidation. But why didn't you stop and say, Mr. President, this is wrong. I cannot discuss this with you?
It's a great question. Maybe if I were stronger, I would have. I was so stunned by the conversation that I just took it in. And the only thing I could think to say, because I was playing in my mind, because I was going to remember every word he said, I was playing in my mind, what should my response be? And that's why I very carefully chose the words. And look, I've seen the tweet about tapes. Lordy, I hope there are tapes.
Now you hear what he says? He carefully thought this out, which goes back to what I was telling you earlier. He thinks out everything. There's nothing left to chance in Comey's mind when he's dealing with you. He's saying something as you're talking. He's thinking it out. And his game plan is laid out like a roadmap. That's an intelligent person. And I don't mean like intelligent like the average intelligent. I'm talking super smart. They laid out a roadmap. Unfortunately, he had on beer goggles, and his lens is very biased.
I remember saying, I agree he's a good guy, as a way of saying I'm not agreeing with what you just asked me to do. Again, maybe other people would be stronger in that circumstance, but that's how I conducted myself. I hope I'll never have another opportunity. Maybe if I did it again, I would do it better.
You described 2 phone calls that you received from President Trump, one on March 30 and one on April 11, where he, quote, described the Russia investigation as a cloud that was impairing his ability, end quote, as president, and asked you, quote, to lift the cloud, end quote. How did you interpret that? And what did you believe he wanted you to do?
I interpreted that as he was frustrated that the Russia investigation was taking up so much time and energy. I think he meant of the executive branch, but in the public square in general, and it was making it difficult for him to focus on other priorities of his. But what he asked me was actually narrower than that. So I think what he meant by the cloud, and again, I could be wrong, but what I think he meant by the cloud was the entire investigation is taking up oxygen and making it hard for me to focus on the things I want to focus on. The ask was to get it out that I, the president, am not personally under investigation.
After April 11th, did he ask you more ever about the Russia investigation? Did he ask you any questions?
We never spoke again after April 11th.
You told the president, I would see what we could do. What did you mean?
It was kind of a slightly cowardly way of trying to avoid telling him we're not going to do that, that I would see what we could do. It was a way of kind of getting off the phone, frankly. And then I turned and handed it to the acting Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Bente.
So I wanted to go into that. Who did you talk with about that, lifting the cloud, stopping the investigation back at the FBI, and what was their response?
Well, the FBI, during one of the 2 conversations, I'm not remembering exactly, I think the first, my chief of staff was actually sitting in front of me and heard my end of the conversation because the president's call was a surprise. And I discussed the lifting the cloud and the request with the senior leadership team, who
Now this is the most important part right here. Of all of this and all the hoo-ha and whatever, when he's talking about this senior team, the Gang of 8,
typically, and I think in all these circumstances, was the deputy director, my chief of staff, the general counsel, the deputy director's chief counsel, and I think in a number of circumstances, the number 3 in the FBI, and a few of the conversations included the head of the National Security Branch. So that group of us that lead the FBI when it comes to national security. Okay,
you have the President of the United States asking you to stop an investigation that's an important investigation. What was the response of your colleagues?
I think they were as shocked and troubled by it as I was. Some said things that led me to believe that. I don't remember exactly, but the reaction was similar to mine. They're all experienced people who had never experienced such a thing.
Now, unfortunately, as he's going through this, and this is where it gets kind of hard, because we don't see their reactions. We have to interpret it through him. And he's not sure. He's squinting. He's trying to think about it and go back and look, point out some tells.
I don't remember exactly, but the reaction was similar to mine. They're all experienced people who had never experienced such a thing.
He's going through feelings. He's going through logic. He's having a hard time with pulling memory from it because he didn't pay attention, because he had on beer goggles. He interpreted through his beer goggles. He's interpreting them through their beer goggles. So we don't know who's who in this gang of 8. But the fact that he felt comfortable for his interpretation of the meeting and memos, because he points that out in this group that he confides in with the things that are going on with the president, tells me that they're the ones making major decisions when it comes to that warring faction. And who's actually the warring faction, we don't know, because we have to look through Comey's beer goggles.
So they were very concerned. And then the conversation turned to about, so what should we do with this information? And that was a struggle for us because we are the leaders of the FBI, so it's been reported to us in that I heard it and now I've shared it with the leaders of the FBI. Our conversation was, should we share this with any senior officials at the Justice Department? Our absolute primary concern was we can't infect the investigative team. We don't want the agents and analysts working on this to know the President of the United States has asked, and when it comes from the President, I took it as a direction, to get rid of this investigation because we're not going to follow that request. And so we decided we got to keep it away from.
I don't understand why he wouldn't at least tell them, or, you know, he's requesting this, but it's wrong. Which means, to me, if you don't think your team can be unbiased, that means they're already looking or seeing that there's nothing there, that their mindset isn't of his mindset.
From our troops, but is there anybody else we ought to tell at the Justice Department? And as I laid out in my statement, we considered whether to tell the Attorney General, decided that didn't make sense because we believed, rightly, that he was shortly going to recuse.
And there you go. They believed Sessions was going to recuse. And then we hear this.
There were no other Senate-confirmed leaders in the Justice Department at that point. The Deputy Attorney General was Mr. Bente, who was acting and going to be shortly in that seat. And we decided the best move would be to hold it, keep it in a box, document it, as we had already done, and then this investigation is going to go on, figure out what to do with it down the road. Is there a way to corroborate this? Our view at the time was...
And there you go. Hold on to it, and let's wait until someone nicer is in, because Sessions is going to be gone. Because that's government protecting government. Beer goggles seen through beer goggle lenses.
Look, it's your word against the president's. There's no way to corroborate this. My view of that changed when the prospect of tapes was raised, but that's how we thought about it then.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rubio.
Feinstein did a really good job as far as her questioning to get him to open. He was very open to her and much more receptive. So that's why we watch Feinstein. Rubio really just drives him in the dirt, but that's funny on a video that you can watch from someone else. But it is hilarious. Now, I know that McCain sounds a little nutty here. We're going to listen to him for a little bit. We're not going to go over this whole thing because there's no relevance. There's nothing relevant in what he's saying.
Hillary Clinton, you made the statement that there wasn't sufficient evidence to bring a suit against her, although it had been very careless in their behavior. But you did reach a conclusion in that case that it was not necessary to.
And of course, these two knuckleheads are making a joke. One could probably assume at this point, because he's not having a stroke, everyone. That is not a stroke mine. That is someone who's probably taken their morning meds twice. That's what that is. 2 Percocets and a Xanax. No, sweetie, you already took them. Again? No. You did it again. And that is what we hear out of Senator McCain.
With respect to Secretary, I'm a little confused, Senator. With respect to Secretary Clinton,
Yeah.
We investigated criminal investigation in connection with her use of a personal email server.
I understand.
And that's the investigation I announced the conclusion of on July 5th.
So, but at the same time, you made the announcement there would be no charges brought against then Secretary Clinton for any activities involved in the Russia involvement in our engagement in our election. I don't quite understand how you could be done with that, but not done with the whole investigation of their attempt to affect the outcome of our election.
No, I'm sorry. We're not, at least when I left, when I was fired on May the 9th, there was still an open, active investigation to understand the Russian efforts and whether any Americans work with them.
But you reached the conclusion that there was no reason to bring charges against Secretary Clinton. So you reached a conclusion. In the case of Mr. Comey, you...
The ramblings of an old man. I wasn't going to make you listen to it. Oh, I wasn't. But it's just the ramblings of an old man who's had one too many Percocets, double dosed on a Xanax, and the blood is flowing to his brain thanks to the Coumadin, because they still subscribe it. Oh my goodness. We're done with him. Eventually he calls him President Comey. Because he's got Comey on the brain and thinking of the president at the same time. Oh, sweetheart. Don't drink your scotch with your pills in the morning. Now, for those of you interested in the Lynch thing, there was nothing new on that as well. Seriously. I did a video on Lynch, pointed that whole thing out and how it went down via her own testimony and the tattletales that were behind her. And I'll put that in the description box. But Comey says nothing new, other than the fact that he took it upon himself, which was false. He got his marching orders. If you like to leave a like, if you like the content, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.